Hi, it's Gary. Welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a number of different papers. The reason for doing this, when I was doing my pens in use video at the start of April, I noticed some issues with the Oxford Optic paper that I use for that. So I thought this is a good time to explore this and to see if we can work out what's going on. And I also thought, well, if we're going to be doing that, let's add in a few extra minutes and we'll look at the same pens on a number of different papers so we can get an idea as to how they're working. So join me now down on the mat. Let's jump on in and take a look at the papers. So here we are down on the mat. What we've got here, this is my list of pens for April of 2022. This is where, although I'd noticed it a little bit in the past, this is where it really jumped out. I mean, yes, this Jinhao seems not too bad. We've got a lot of feathering coming through here on the Noodler. See some on here with the Oxblood. And on here with the Cosmic Swirl. Tobacco Sunburst, not too bad. But although I've said there it's a medium, it's actually a fine nib. And then the Sea Glass, it's actually very dry anyway. So that's something which didn't look too bad. But it's a different story if we turn over the paper. Now, the camera, I've got this set at a different angle than I normally use, which is why we can see the whole page. But hopefully you can see on here, not so much where I've put these additional pens, but, you know, there, look at all that show through. Look at all the show through on all of these, even that Diamine Tobacco Sunburst with the fine nib. It's all showing through terrible. Just going to flick to the start of this. There we go. So this is from January. You know, we can see a big difference. There's a little bit of show through here, but by the time we get to April, it's terrible. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn over so we've got a new page. I'm going to write with 7 different pens. You're only going to see me writing on this paper. When we look at the others, I've already done the writing on them, but I thought it's still nice to see some writing being done, so I thought, well, let's do it on here. So I'm going to write with each of these pens. I'm going to look at the drying times. Once we've done that, we'll take a look at the results, and then I'm going to look at the results I got on a number of different papers, some very similar, some very different, just so we can see what's going on. So the first pen we've got is a Jinhao 35. So this has got a fine nib. So let's do some writing. The ink in here is by PenBBS. And it's Autumn Frosted Leaves. Lovely nice colour in that. I really like this. Let's look at our drying times though. This is immediate. Already quite dry. 10 seconds. After 10 seconds, that's dry. This is what we were seeing when we were checking these out at the start of April. Just going to write a sentence now. There we go. So that's performing how we expected. The next pen is Jinhao X750, and in here I've got Noodlers Navajo Turquoise. Big difference between the two pens. This one, it's a medium nib. So here we go. This is a Jinhao X750 with a medium nib. And as said, Noodler Navajo Turquoise. Starting to see some feathering on this one already, which is what I was expecting when we looked back in April. Drying times, 10 seconds. Still smudging ever so slightly. We'll go 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, and that's dry. Now, I'm going to try and write a sentence, But please be aware, most of these pens, they're virtually out of ink now, so I don't know if there's going to be enough ink to actually complete the sentence, but we'll give it a go. There, that one survived. I love the blue of this ink. I know we're not here to look at the pens and the inks, but I just thought I'd mention that. But again, I am starting to see some feathering already. So let me move the paper up. The next pen is another Jinhao. One thing you'll notice is virtually all these pens are Jinhaos. This is a Jinhao 159. Again, it's got a medium nib. So we've got here a Jinhao 159 with a medium nib and Diamine Oxblood. Drying times, there's immediate, that's a lot wetter, isn't it? 10 seconds, then 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, that's dry. Look at all this feathering. For full transparency, this pen is out of ink. What I had to do was twist down the converter so that I can force the last little bit in. So the feed was highly saturated. Let's see if we can do a sentence. Yeah, we managed to squeeze that out. Once again though, we're already starting to see the feathering coming through on that. My next pen, Jinhao 100. This is a gorgeous meteorite colour. It's another one, it's got a medium nib. So we have here a Jinhao 100 with a medium nib. And the ink is by Oster. And it's called Cosmic Swirl. Let's look at the drying times. Then 10 seconds. So again, after 10 seconds, we're dry. We'll do our sentence. So there we go, that was a Jinhao 100. That's actually not looking too bad, maybe a little bit of feathering, but only the tiniest amount, and I'm really looking hard for it. But it does dry quickly. Just going to turn over the page. We'll look at the results in a couple of minutes. The next pen, the Jinhao 200. This has got a fine nib. So let's go with this one. The ink by Diamine. It's Tobacco Sunburst. I'm quite liking this ink. It's a brown obviously, but to me I can see hints of green coming through it. We'll look at the drying times. So there's immediate. For a moment to swipe it, 10 seconds. Still wet after 10 seconds, so let's now go for 30 seconds. So after 30 seconds, well, we're still getting a little bit of wetness on there. 1 minute. After a minute, that's nice and dry. Let's do our sentence. So the inks on this page, they're starting to show up a bit wetter. The next pen is a Jinhao 9056. This, it's got a cursive italic nib in it now. Now, I'm not sure if this will write because I've been having awful problems. Oh, here we go, it does. Jinhao 9056 with a cursive italic nib. The ink by Troublemaker. Sea glass. This is quite an unusual coloured ink. Drying times, there's immediate. That's nearly dry already. 10 seconds. There we go, that's nice and dry now. Let's do our sentence. There we go. Then Grumpy Wizards at it again. The final pen. This isn't on my list for April, but when you see the colour in here, you'll understand why. This is a Jinhao 159. In here, I've got a broad nib. It's from a Conklin pen, so it's a nice wide line. I've also got a really nice dark blue ink. So we've got here a Jinhao 159. Say it's got a Conklin broad nib. The ink is by Diamine and it's Sargasso Sea. As you see, it's a nice dark blue. I've deliberately used this because we're looking at show through, aren't we? Let's do our drying times. Then it's immediate. 10 seconds. Still slightly smudging at 10 seconds. 30 seconds. 30 seconds there, that's nice and dry. What I'm going to do, I'm going to rip these 2 pages out. Just so we remember, these were the 2 pages immediately after April's. Right, they've been ripped out now. Let's take a quick look at them side by side. What I'm going to do is hopefully, if I've calculated this correctly, I can get there we are, April's page there, and here we go with the new ones. So yes, I know I haven't done the header, but we're seeing very similar issues. The Oxblood, we're seeing a lot more feather in there, but remember I had to prime the feed with that. Cosmic Swirl seems about the same. If we look at our drying times look all more or less similar. You can maybe say with the PenBBS Autumn Frosted Leaves, it's dried a little bit quicker because over here we had to do 10 seconds and 30, but that's because it was the teeniest amount of smudge there, which I was being very, very picky about. Let's look at the other 3. So the Tobacco Burst, about the same. Hard to compare the sea glass because we're talking here, we've got a cursive italic as opposed to a medium. But the ink, again to me, some slight feathering that I'm seeing. And then with Jinhao 159, we don't have a comparison for it. Let's turn the page over. There we go. So on here, we don't have as much show through as there was with the Jinhao 35. I know it's hard to see because I've written over it, but you can see here a little tiny bit of show through. Same here, to be honest, with the Noodlers ink. The Oxblood definitely showing through. Definitely seeing that Cosmic Swirl. But with the other inks, which is now 2 pages after, we're not seeing anything until we get down to that really dark blue of that Diamine Sargasso Sea. So it seems the further I'm going away from April's page, the better it's getting. I do know why that is, and I'll show you in a minute why it is. Let's move that out of the way. This book here that I've just brought in, this is another Oxford Optic notepad. Exactly the same size. I believe even bought at the same time. If we're looking here, we're seeing exactly the same going on. I'm not going to go into too much detail. We're just going to do a very quick look. And if I turn off the page, there we go. There's a 200, there's a 9056 and the Diamine. So all of these drying really quickly. Still getting all that show through. And if I turn the page on this, getting a lot of show through on that first one, on the Diamine Tobacco Sunburst, and also on the Diamine Sargasso Sea, but nothing from that cursive italic. But I'm not sure if the nib's dry or if the ink's dry. But we're seeing very similar to what we were getting back in April. And I think I know why that is. So what I do with these notebooks, I tend to leave them open to the page that I was last using. So I'll do my pens in use, then I'll leave that open to that page. It's not in direct sunlight. It's actually in a bit of shade because it goes on a shelf. But we've had a lot of heat over the summer months, which, you know, it's normal for Australia. And I think what's happened is the heat has dried out the top few pages of each notebook that's left open, which is why, as we're going through here, I think it was improving because we're getting further and further away from where it had been left open, back towards where it hadn't. So the amount of dry out was reduced. So I thought, well, how can I test that? So what I did is, from this pens in use notebook, I literally opened at random and I pulled out 2 pages. This is the first page. I'm seeing a lot crisper line. I'm not seeing the feathering. You know, that Diamine Oxblood, you know, on the April one still got lots of feathering. On that random page, hardly any. Same with the Jinhao 100. Look at the 200. Look, that goes all the way over to a minute before it dries out. The Navajo Turquoise did the same. The Oxblood did the same. The Cosmic Swirl did the same. So it looks like it's because the paper dried out. Let's take a look on the back sides. So here we are with the first one. Look at that. Nothing showing through. The second page. Nothing showing through. So this is what makes me think it's the fact that I leave the notepads open. Because, as I say, random pages from within the book, no problems. As we were going further in away from that open page, no problems. So my next test, what I did this time is I used this notebook. This still uses the Oxford Optic paper, but it's a black and red one. And this one, I've got to be honest, I do keep closed. No issues with writing, no feathering. Nothing showing through. The next page, no feathering. Nothing showing through. So that further helps me to cement what I think was going on. So next I thought, Gary, you've done all your testing on Oxford paper. How about some other papers? So the first one, I've got an endless recorder notepad here. This uses 68 GSM Tomoe River paper. No issues. You know, the first one is fairly dry quickly anyway. The rest of them, making it to a minute, maybe not the Cosmic Swirl, but even a Tobacco Sunburst in a fine nib made it to a minute. Same we get on the other side. Again, not much showing through. The next one I looked at, I thought, well, let's try something different. This is a Midori MD Paper Pad Cotton. Again, it's A5 paper. This one, it came in this resealable bag, so I actually keep it in here. Just take this out. There you are, the paper didn't want to come off the pad. Start with page 1, shall we? There we go. So page 1. No issues. If anything, they seem to be taking a little bit longer to dry. Nothing's showing through. Second page. Again, no issues. Nothing's showing through. So that was some nice paper. Well, a number of different nice papers. So the next thing, I went for this. This is a cheaper notebook. I bought it from the supermarket. I think it was $5 for 2. So on this cheaper notepad, I don't think there's any feathering anywhere, even though it's cheap notepad paper. Nothing showing through. Same here with these pens. Yes, they dry a lot quicker, but it's cheap paper. It's a lot more absorbent. But again, we have nothing showing through. So after all this experimenting, and I've got to be honest, I had a really good time doing it because I like trying things like this. All I can say is it's my fault. I need to stop leaving my notebooks open like that. Because of the heat, it's causing these pads to dry out. Fortunately, it's not all the pages. So what I'll do is I'll rip out a few pages of this. They'll go into my scrap paper box so that I can use it if I need anything, because my scrap paper notes, they're literally things, I jot something down there and I throw it in the bin, so it doesn't matter if it feathers, it doesn't matter if it shows through. I need to stop leaving them open. That's the big lesson from this. And it's a good lesson that I learned, and hopefully if you're like me and you used to leave them open, hopefully you'll be able to stop doing that as well. So this was my exploration of what was causing my problems for my pens in use in April of 2022. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I've really enjoyed doing this one. It's one of the things I really like is trying to explore what's going on when things aren't working as I would expect. So I've really had some good fun actually preparing and filming this. What are your thoughts about these papers? What are your thoughts about my conclusions? Please drop a comment down below. Let's kickstart the conversation. Please hit the thumbs up button. Every time you like, every time you comment, just helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.